Life doesn't move in straight lines. It twists, turns, and surprises us along the way. On Better Things Ahead, we talk with people who have walked those winding paths. Each story reminds us of the lessons, hope, and promise of better things ahead.
Today I am joined by Debbie and Pat. I'm so glad that you guys are here today. Y'all have been a guest on our podcast before as we thought about grief in the holidays, and today we're going to talk about a subject that's going to be a difficult subject to talk about, one that every one of us probably at some point in our life is going to experience, or we're going to have a loved one who experiences it, is the death of a spouse. What I'd like to do is just take a second, and I know that you guys were on before, but I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit about, one, how y'all became connected to one another, I'll just share personally. Debbie, one of the first things I did as the pastor at Ridgecrest was come and be with your family at Ronnie's passing, and that has always stuck with me. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of the first steps into losing a spouse and what that was like, and how would you characterize it? What was that experience like?
Well, it's probably one of the worst moments of my life, and I do remember. Actually, you had preached your, I don't know if we call it trial sermon, whatever you want to call it, where we were going to vote on a pastor, and on that Sunday, and Ronnie was there. I remember where we were sitting even, and then by the middle of that week, he became very ill, and I appreciated you being there. Ronnie and I were married when he died. We had been married about 45 years, and so I tell people all the time that I had a wonderful mother and daddy who took great care of me. I went to college, still taken care of by my parents, and got married and after college, and so I went from mom and daddy to a husband and then to being alone, and it's a very different world. But I think to understand the grief of losing a spouse, you also have to know a little bit about what our life was like. We got married, and we thought, we committed our lives to God. We believed, as it says in Joshua, that our house would serve the Lord, and we did. We had two daughters who we were very proud of, and then we had 5 grandchildren. And so we thought our lives were set. Worked all our lives, and it was time to reach that point in our life where we could maybe enjoy things and travel and do all this. And then Ronnie did become ill in his early 60s, but we thought we had everything under control, and then fairly suddenly he died. He was 67 and I was 65, and that was very young to be alone. But we were surrounded by godly friends, a godly church, and I do believe that's what carried me through those first few weeks. Pat and I knew each other already, but our husbands died very close to the same time, and we had become better acquainted through all this.
Yeah, so I was married to my husband for 41 years. And we had a little different path. I had been a Christian many, many years. My husband was raised in a Methodist church, and he felt like he was good enough to go to heaven, and everything was fine. And I prayed for him for many, many years for salvation. And he came to know the Lord just in the last year of his life. So our paths were similar, but also different. And I'll never forget, they died within 2 days of each other. And Brian Wright did both of our sermons for our funerals, and he remembered Ronnie, and he said, Ronnie served in the church all his life. John came to know the Lord in the last year or so of his life, and Brian met with him many weeks. He came to his home when he was been sick and ministered to him there, and they're both in heaven now. And so it was very comforting that whenever your spouse comes to know the Lord, you can know when they die that they're in heaven. But let me just say, knowing they are in heaven does not take away our grief. And I just want to share that you're still going to go through the grief. But Debbie and our paths met when it was about a year after my husband died. Brian and Debbie had started wanting to have a ministry here at Ridgecrest, and they asked me to come. And I said, well, okay, I'll come. I didn't think I needed it. I thought I was going through grief normally, and but I came. And I found out when I came that I was probably avoiding my grief. I looked good on the outside, but I wasn't wanting to look at any pictures of my husband. I didn't want to listen to Christian music because we played that right before he died. And there were a lot of things that were very hard for me. And I found when I came, I was able to open up and talk about those things in a safe place with other people that understood. And it was okay to cry, and it was okay to share those things. So that's how we came to know each other better. And we're both nurses. So just so many similar paths that we're on. And so we've been able to connect and share our stories to hopefully help others through that. And another difference that I want to share is that she stayed in their very same home that she was with Ronnie, and I moved not too long after, and I can't say either one is better than the other because we are both still going through the same grief process, very similar. No grief is the same, but wherever you are, you're still going to go through it. And I just felt encouraged by the grief group to be able to open up and share at a specific time in a safe place with people, and I would encourage anyone else to do that as well.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing those thoughts, because those first steps into losing somebody that you care a lot about and you spend a lot of life with, a spouse, is there's not really much you can do to prepare for that. You can think through some things, but it's just difficult to know what the experience is going to be like. You can talk to other people that may have experienced, but until you go through it yourself, it's going to be new. It's going to be hard. It's going to be different. So I want to ask a question that's kind of got three parts, and I'll be happy to repeat these. But the three parts have to do with how the losing your spouse has affected different relationships in your life, and because I think that's one of the things that we think a lot about how it affects us individually, but it also has an impact on our relationships with other people. And there's three areas that I want to talk about. I kind of want to work from the top down. So first, how did it affect your relationship with God? Where did you see some growth in you? Where were some things that maybe that were harder? The second part has to do with how did it affect your relationship with your family? How did family dynamics change after your spouse passed? And then the last part is how did it affect your relationship with the church? Because I think all three of those probably were impacted in some ways. So let's start with the top level. How did it affect your faith?
I think it made it stronger,
Mm-hmm.
no question. I considered myself to have a strong faith. Ronnie and I, we went to church from the day we got married, took the kids to church. We were involved in everything. And we both felt very strongly that our mission on this earth was to share Jesus with others. So I think when Ronnie died, I felt like I had to do that double almost, because that was so important to him. And one of the things that he would never miss an opportunity to share Jesus with someone. He just, if you were in a restaurant, he was going to tell the waitress about Jesus. If he was in anywhere he went. So I knew that I needed to be strong in that faith, and God he cleared the path. Now, I'm not going to say that I didn't get mad and I didn't fuss with God sometimes. And I can remember saying, God, why? I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to go to bed at night by myself. And God had always been my friend, and God is always going to be my father, but I think it made me closer because through prayer, I felt like I was able to share my sorrow with the Lord. And one of the things that was very important to Ronnie was he liked to make sure we as a family and we as a couple gave to missions and encouraged opportunities for people to be able to go and tell others about Jesus. So I felt very strong that Ronnie would want me to do that, and God would lead me in that way. And so I continued to do that. So I would have to say, I had fallen on my face so many a time before the Lord and said, God, I don't know if I can make it through this. But He always gets me through. And things that worry me, sometimes I feel like He's saying to me, Debbie, we got this. Stop worrying. You'll be okay. But you will worry. If you are alone, you will face the things where you had someone to share, like, oh, what do I do about this dead tree in my backyard? Well, now sometimes I'll ask God, what am I going to do? I got a tree back there that needs cut down. And it helps to have that relationship where you can just talk to God about anything.
Okay. So for me, I feel too that it made my faith stronger. It made my faith stronger, first of all, like 3.5 years before, when my husband had a stroke and was not saved, and God spared his life, and was able to spare his life until he came to know Him. And so that really increased my faith. And then my faith increased when right before my husband died, I said, are you ready to go be with Jesus? Because I could tell he was just struggling and couldn't breathe. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you go ahead and be with Jesus. I'll be there, but you're going to get there first. And it was just so encouraging to me that I was able to say that, knowing with faith that He would be there. And I just have to tell you something really amazing about that, how God works. We had someone come to the funeral you know how you have someone talk about the person? Well, this was a man that grew up with my husband and knew him when he was a kid and all they did, and even growing up. And he shared with us that he had talked to my husband not too long before he died, and my husband shared with him, you know what, I found Jesus. I never knew that, and we almost didn't have that person come do the funeral, but we asked his cousin. It's because I can't do it, I would be too sad. So my sister thought of this one, and it was just encouraging to me and made my faith just get bigger and bigger. But I will share with you that there was one thing that I had trouble with, not forgiving myself for certain things that I did. I mean, there were even times when my husband was so sick that I felt myself saying, God, why is he still here? He's suffering so bad. And then after he died, I wasn't ready for that. I said, why? No, I want him still here. I miss him. And so just, being able to share those things that I regretted that, and I confessed to God. And then times when, marriages are great. We were married 40-something years, but there are also hard times and things we didn't do right. And so I would go back at first and just think of all those things that I did wrong. And I would ask God to forgive me, but I was still beating myself up about it. And I want to share with you that God said to me, I have forgiven you for that. Why are you thinking you should still not forgive yourself? So that made I'm like Debbie, I just have Jesus with me all the time, and that's what helps me get through it. Because He is out, and He was there with me even before my husband was saved. There were many, many lonely times then for me. And so just He was there with me, and that encouraged me to continue in my faith. But I had some hard times. I couldn't listen to Christian music. It made me hurt too much. And I thought that was probably not helpful to me. But we played those songs for my husband before he died, and then it was just very painful to play them. And I still have a little struggle with some of those, but I'm starting to try to do better because I want to praise Jesus. And there's just things we have to work through after we lose a spouse. I don't want to take up too long, but I do want to share that when you lose a spouse, it's a part of you is gone. A part of me is gone. It says in Genesis 2:24, they are become one.
That's right.
And so somehow it takes time, and I still am there, that you're not who you were. I'm not the same person I was. And so part of me is missing. And I think that all spouses go through that when their husband or wife dies. And it's very hard to deal with who you are now.
Yeah, I think it's a good word. I want to follow that up. I don't know if y'all ever heard of amputees who struggle
Yes,
with. They have that
Yeah.
they think
It's
the
that
limb's
pain.
still there, and it's
Yeah.
they it's
Phantom
even
pain.
years after phantom pain. Yeah, that's what it's
Yeah.
called. And so that's I think that's an important thing to point out is biblically that is what we experience when we get married. Is yeah, it's a one flesh relationship, and to lose part of you is painful. And yeah, so. So the next question is, how did it affect the family dynamic? Like, you talked about your relationship with God, which is the closest relationship you'll ever have. How did it affect the people closest to you and your relationship with them?
I think it makes it stronger, but I think it also makes a little bit of a strain at some point because I have two daughters, and Pat's got a daughter and a son.
Two sons.
And two sons. And so I think it depends on your family dynamics. I know Pat's family is very close. My family is very close. And actually, both of my children, their husbands, my grandchildren, we all went to go to church together. But I think my girls felt more responsible for Mama. You know, they would feel like they needed to step up and do the things that their daddy would have done.
Yeah.
And my son-in-laws have as well. And, I think in some ways I don't want, and I think you find this, and I would say this to anyone who loses their spouse, people think you're weaker, and you really are, but yet you don't want to admit that.
Sure.
And so I had to sort of learn that this precious family I have, they're here for me to lean on. And just little things like, I'll have to tell a funny, that one thing Pat and I have said as we do the Greek classes, it's always good to find some funny things, but my husband loved to go to the grocery store, and I was so glad that he loved to buy groceries because I don't care to go to the grocery store. Well, it wasn't long after Ronnie had died. Marianne is my oldest daughter, and I said, I gotta go to the grocery store, and she went with me. Well, the checkout lady at the grocery store had known that Ronnie died. And so I'm standing there crying, she's crying, and I hear Marianne on the phone with her sister saying, Kelly, I'm through. Next grocery trip is yours with Mama. I can't do this. So as your children, your family, they learn they have to pick up some of that, fill in that space. But then for me, Ronnie and I were at everything our grandchildren did. We were at every ball game. We were at every play, wherever they were. So I found myself even more so wanting to be there in the place of both of us. So I think I encourage anyone who loses their spouse to lean on their family. I could not have made it without my family. I have a wonderful family. I have my brother, my sister-in-law, my nieces, all of my children, my grandchildren, they have all been there to see me through it. There have been times, though, when I thought, oh, I can do this myself. And you just got to learn. You don't have to go that road alone.
And for me, I do have a very close family as well, and many grandchildren, and we just found that it was hard to not have him around because he wanted to be at everything. He loved them to come over to our house, and they still remember all the times. I mean, he liked to just sit on the couch and let everybody do things around him. He was a couch potato, but he was very fun for them, and they remember that about him. And so just missing him when we get together is very hard. And I just want to encourage, I do have one family member, it was a cousin who was not that close to me in the recent years, but growing up we were very close. And she had lost her husband 6 months before. And so she was a very helpful family member to talk to me and share the things that were similar and able to grieve about them and talk about things that are sad. But then she always encouraged me I have more family, I have children, I have grandchildren. What are we going to do next week, and what are we planning with them, because they are my future. So she encouraged me to embrace my future and not to stay sad that my husband was missing it all. And he was one that loved to be at every ball game. He played sports growing up, and he just thought it was the greatest thing to watch his grandchildren. And I have several that play sports still, and I love to go to those, and I don't want to miss them, and he wouldn't want me to miss them, but then they play some of those old songs, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and all those things I heard with him, and it makes me sad.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a word for that. It's called getting ambushed.
Mm-hmm.
And we all get ambushed when we grieve. It just means you're not expecting to be sad at that moment. You're out to do something, just like you were at the grocery store. I had it, at the ball games when it just hit me, oh, he's not here. And so just, I think it's just important to know that you're going to have those times, and that's all normal. And it's okay to be sad and have tears, because tears are healing. The emotional tears that God gives us when we grieve have stress relief hormones in them. This is chemically true. And they have painkillers in them, so it's good to have those tears.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was a hard balance with my children wanting to protect their children, my grandchildren. Do we talk about it? Do we not? So I just made them each a collage of pictures of them with their grandfather, and gave it to them in a frame, and they could put it in a drawer, they could put it out, whatever they want to do, but they're their memories with their grandfather. So I was thankful to have that with each one of them, except for my poor daughter had her 2 children that are very young now. They have never known their grandfather, and it's still sad for my daughter that, sometimes she'll look and say, oh, we called him Papa. He would just have so much fun watching them. but he can't. But he's watching them from heaven, so we're okay. But I just had a hard balance of how to share with the kids, but so I just kind of let them lead it. And the grandchildren talk to me even 6 years later. They still talk about Papa with me. So they have their memories of them, and I think that's a good thing.
I think that's really important too, that you keep talking about that person.
Mm-hmm.
That no, they're not here, but they're in heaven, they're with Jesus, but don't forget the precious life they lived, and especially when you share those memories with your children, your grandchildren, I think that's very good for you as well as the spouse.
Yeah. All right, this is a different type of family that has walked with you guys through losing a spouse. How did losing your spouse affect your relationship with the church? Where did you see some things change? How did it grow? What would you tell your church family about, and I'm going to use a word that you told me you didn't like, but becoming a widow? You notice I've not asked that question that way, but I think it's important that people understand there are some aspects of this that they probably hadn't thought through. So how did it affect your relationship with the church, and what would you tell the church as they try to help minister to people? What should they do?
Well, you don't want to be treated differently.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's why Pat and I both have talked about this. That widow word,
Yeah.
or widower, if you're lost your wife, I never liked that word.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because it makes you feel like you're a different person.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't change in my relationship with the church. Some people may need to, though. If you can't worship well where you've worshipped all those years, if you need a different place, I would encourage someone to find that place. For me, I loved my church family. Ronnie and I loved our church family together, and we had so much history at the church that I did not want to leave that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I think people treat you differently, but I do think they look at you and they think maybe, are they fragile? How do I manage it? But I wanted my relationship at church to continue to be the same, and mine did. I continued teaching the same life group that Ronnie and I taught. I had a lot of the same relationships.
Yeah.
So I would say, as a church family, your job is to stand by that person and ask them what they need. Do not be afraid to say, what can I do to help you? Is there anything you need? Is there something that we can do as a church to come and walk beside you? And Pat, tell what you said about, you and I were talking about this the other day, about how when they were sick, you still needed the yard mowed, but what happened after he died? Tell that, because I think that.
Okay, so about the widow, I'm like that too. I'm a different person. I am a widow now. and it's biblical, so I have to embrace it. It's okay. But my husband was sick for several years before he died. Well, 3.5 years. And so I had to start doing a lot of the things that a husband normally would do back then. And he tried to help in it whatever way he could, but he couldn't physically or mentally handle everything. So I've been handling it for a while, but then I noticed after he died, people were coming up and helping me with things that I'd been doing for years. And I said, why are they all coming to help me now? And then it hit me, oh, because I'm a widow. That's why. And so I had to acknowledge that I am a different person. And I am a widow, and it was kind of nice to have the help. So, but as far as the church goes, so being that my husband was not a believer, he started going to church with me early on when the kids were little, but it soon became that they wanted to sleep late and he wanted to go early, and so he decided to go golfing instead on Sundays, and so we didn't have a really church relationship together, but I always came, and my church has been very important to me because they have all prayed for him with me and been there for me. And do you know, after he came to know Christ, and Brian Wright came to our house once a week many times after he got sick, and ministered to him there and let him talk about what he wanted to, sports, but then he was always there to share Jesus with them too. And I tell Brian now, I feel very bad that I wasn't a very good hostess, because I would always leave the room and get out of the way, and he probably thought I was the most unfriendly person, but I was trying to get away so he could talk about Jesus, because my husband always thought early on that I beat him up over the head with the Bible, and so I just had to pray for God to how to handle it. And so the church here has been very, very important to me, because I think Brian was a big part of helping him grow closer to Jesus. And I actually was able to be, this is just, might make me cry, but I was actually able to be the one to share Christ with him and have him pray to receive Christ. Never thought that would happen. But
Wonderful.
But it was okay. And but the first time he was sick, and I had to text it to him because he was going to sleep, and I said, did you ever later when we finally got to talking, he thought he was about to die, I said, did you ever read the text I gave you? And I said, did you give your life to Christ? He said, well, probably not the way you wanted me to. And I said, well, we can pray right now. So he prayed then. He didn't pray out loud, but he moved his lips, and I knew it, and I've had confirmation since. But that, just want to say that the church was here for me, and since that, now the grief group has been very important to me, and I just want to share that I thought I was doing okay with my grief, going along. My life was moving along, but I came to find out when I came to the grief class, I was sharing a lot more of my feelings and things about him, and I feel like it's because the grief group at this church is very informal, and it's a very safe place to share your grief and to share your tears with other people who have similar situations and are there for you. And so I am very thankful that the church has started that program, and that we're able to continue that and help others with what we've been through.
I would like to ask a question before I move on to, I want to talk about practical things, but before I get there, and this is kind of a practical thing, at what point do you think somebody who is dealing with something like this, losing somebody that they care about, and they kind of get into this grief process, and they maybe get stuck, at what point do you think you would encourage somebody to do one or two things? Either find a group like our group here, and I'm thankful for the group that we have here. Brian's done a great job. Y'all done a great job of leading in that area, or moving beyond a group to finding professional help. Like, at what point do you think somebody should maybe take those steps?
I think when you're stuck, and I use that word really truly stuck, you're in this spot where you cannot leave your house, where you can't see yourself doing anything but being 100% absorbed and full of sadness, you definitely need to seek help. I found myself not doing, I didn't change the way we had always done things, I continued life, and I know Pat pretty much did too. But we've talked about that in our grief class, that if you can't, there are people who just cannot step away from that very first stage of grief where they're just so sad all the time. Don't let yourself be so consumed by the grief that it drives you. And I tell people now, I will say this, and this is my words, that there are times when I want no one to be around me. I want to be in my house with my own thoughts, and I may want to cry, and it's been 6 years and I will still do that. That's okay to have those moments. But if you find yourself where you just really can't get past that, you need to seek help more, professionally. And sometimes the people out there in the world, just the friends or the person you meet on the street, they may not have the right things to say. But to look for a group where you can share the grief with people that have things in common with you, or with a professional, seek it. Don't let yourself drown in your sorrows.
Yeah. Well, I would like to say that everything that Debbie said is very true. I would not wait until you see if you get into that spot, because I thought I was doing well, and I think I still would have made it through it, but I say go ahead and seek either a grief group. There are several that are more formal, or the one like ours is very laid back. You don't have to say anything if you don't want. You can just be there. We show videos. We try to make it available for whoever wants to come. And I would share to do that. If you don't feel like you can do that, at least look for someone who's been there, a mentor to help you. I had like I said, I had a cousin who helped me, and I didn't have to go anywhere but on my phone. And so someone that can help you make the right steps, and then they can kind of see if you're getting stuck. That's what I would recommend to do.
Yeah, that's great advice. So the next question that I had to do with kind of the more practical parts of losing a spouse. What are some things that you learned that were very practical about things that you just maybe didn't realize before that you were going to have to start dealing with, handling? Somebody that hasn't gone through this, or maybe preparing to go through this, what would you tell them are some of the practical things that you experienced as you started to go through this?
Well, go ahead.
I don't have a lot, but I'll just say that it was helpful to me that because my husband was sick, we knew we needed to go ahead and get the funeral preparations done. I would encourage anyone. I mean, we all know we're going to die at some point.
Right.
So whether your spouse is sick or not, go ahead and do your funeral planning ahead of time with them. And if you can, get that paid for, because that's very helpful to the family afterwards. You also know what their wishes are, so you don't have to guess and decide as a family later what you want to do about it. So I would encourage you to do that. Also, make sure you have a will, so that things are straight with that when the time comes. And I'll just share kind of a funny thing. His name is still, it's been 6 years, as we've been saying, his name is still on my checks. I can't take it off yet, but I need to, because he's not on there. But I have to take a death certificate to the bank to do that. So make sure you have plenty of death certificates for the things that are needed afterwards. Because you don't just go and say, my husband's gone, take him off. That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
That's a good one, the death certificates.
Make sure
you have several of those. We had not planned Ronnie's funeral, and in fact, when we went to the funeral home, my children were there, and Michael was there, and Brian was there. And when we sat there and talked about how much it was going to cost, I remember my eyes getting very big and going, wow. So be prepared for those things. And Pat's right, if you can pre-plan, that is very wise. But I think that's one of the things. I think having, you got to pay the bills. You got to keep paying the bills. So know, even if you don't know that much about the bills, find out. Make sure you're aware of that. Ronnie died in his 60s, and I was in my 60s, so that we were really not quite at that point where we were expecting it. but know who you owe what and where you, how you do all those things. Also, when you want to know where all your insurance papers are. So I would just, my suggestion, and Ronnie had everything all together, so I was able to put my hands on it, is to gather all your paperwork, put it in a place where you can find it, and then talk to people. Don't ask the next door neighbor or the man down the street how to do it. Talk to people that know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things we did after Ronnie and I had a will, but the girls and I met with an attorney and I made a will so that I would have all those things settled for the future. You have to talk to the banker. You need to talk to all the people. You need to talk to the people that are knowledgeable, and because if your affairs are not in order, it'll ambush you, as Pat says, and things can happen that you just go, oh my goodness, what do I do about this?
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask somebody.
Sure.
If you don't know what to do, ask somebody. And if the person you go to for advice doesn't know the answer, hopefully they can help you find that answer.
Yeah, and I just want to say that it's not a comfortable subject, and it's not something anybody wants to do. And so it's very hard to make yourself do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Debbie and I are sitting here afterwards saying, please make it easier on yourself and go ahead and take that time to think about something that's very uncomfortable to think about and do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because like one of the things that we don't think about a lot is the fact that grief, it paralyzes us physically. It also paralyzes us mentally.
It does.
And you've got so many decisions to make after, and if you haven't planned those things out ahead of time, you don't want to make those decisions in that moment, I'm sure. And so my guess is like making all those decisions is incredibly hard, and it's compounded by just the sadness that you feel.
Yes.
And so, all right, one last question that I have. If you could tell somebody who has just lost a spouse something they should know, what would you tell them? That's a big question, I know.
That is a big question. I would tell them to relish the happy family moments, relish the good things that you had with that spouse. Don't dwell, and Pat says this very well, because she says she asked God to forgive her for the things that maybe were wrong. Now, don't ever think that when you lose your spouse, you're not going to be hounded by, oh, why did I argue with him or her about the color of the wall or about why we did things a certain way.
Right.
Don't dwell on those things. They will come to your mind, but don't dwell on those things. Dwell on the good things. Remember the blessings that you had as a couple and as a family. And I share those things with my grandchildren. My grandchildren know all about their granddaddy and all about the fun things that we used to do and how he would be proud of them. So that would be my biggest piece of advice is enjoy remembering the wonderful moments you had. Don't forget them. And don't let your family and your children forget them.
Yeah, and to that point, I've shared with the class and everyone that I am not a journaling type of person. I've never been one to do a journal. I never even thought I should write in my Bible because I didn't think I should add to God's Word. So I'm very careful about that. But I did realize that I wanted to remember things and that I knew I was going to forget, and I wanted future family members to know things about my husband that I would probably forget. And so right after the funeral, I just people had so many good things to say about him that I wanted to write those down. So I would encourage you to get some type of notebook or a journal, whatever you want to call it, but some place that you can just write down when you think of it, and don't make it a burden to do it. I just have it still after 6 years. If something comes up in a day that I think about or wanted to, or one of those ambush moments that I get sad, I just write those things down in there. And that's for me, and it's healing for me, but it's also good for the family for the future to be able to know things about him. And also maybe learn a little bit about the things that he did. You know, opposites attract, and so there were good things in your spouse that maybe you didn't have. And my husband was very much a people person, and he would love to talk to people, and to the point that I thought he was bothering people, as I would be more the one that just wanted to sit back. And so I found out later that people came up to me at the funeral, and they were so happy. And he liked to have nicknames for people. And they remembered that about him, and they were so thankful that he spent time with them. And it's taught me that that was not a bad thing. Maybe I should do more of that.
Yeah, that's good.
One thing I would, and we talked about this for the church, is I would say this to anyone who's wondering how they deal with people with grief. We like to talk about that family member we lost. We don't. I mean, we know that. I know that my husband's in heaven. Pat knows that John's in heaven. But we enjoy hearing things about them. So don't ever feel that you can't mention their name.
Yeah.
Because people, I guess it's awkward, but it is okay to talk about them.
Yeah.
Well, they're afraid they're going to make you sad.
Right.
Make you cry. And it's okay to be sad and cry. It's not a bad thing. And we did like to hear about them, and
Yes.
it's fun to know their experiences with them. And so, never be afraid to talk about it. And I also want to share that don't forget the grieving person. After all the funeral's done, all the cards are done, everybody has to go back to their normal life, and you can't go back to that life because you don't have that life anymore. You have a different life. And so try to reach out to people that you know are hurting later on. Something as a simple card, just a phone call, I'm thinking of you. Want to tell them a funny story about their spouse, just anything to let them know they are still hurting. They are not okay and gone back to
That's
life.
right.
So just, encourage them in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, ladies, thank y'all so much for your time, your experience, your wisdom. All of those, I think, are going to be incredibly helpful to people who are kind of stepping through this process. And I want to share it with those who have been listening today and watching. If you're going through grief, especially grief around losing a loved one, losing a spouse, there are people here that want to help, and there is a group that meets pretty regularly throughout the year, journeying through grief together, that we would love to kind of help you connect with. And I would encourage you to reach out to our church at Ridgecrest and find out more about that. If you're not in our local area and you're just trying to find somebody to talk to, you can email us here, and we can try to help you find a group where you are. Because we do want to help you walk through this process. We want to make the world a better place, and one of the things that we can do is try to make walking through grief a little bit better for the people who are going through it.
Thanks for joining us on Better Things Ahead. Follow the show on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video of our podcast. Until next time, keep moving forward, because there are always better things ahead.